Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, everyone, boys and girls, and we've got an echo. There we go. Wow, that was interesting. Very nice. Anyway, thank you for joining us on the Thursday Night Hockey Show. I'm Dave Valente. Uh, Briefy show this week. Not a whole ton to talk about. We got a big trade that happened in the NHL. We've had some coaches hired, and we've got a kind of a dud of a series so far. And we got a lot of smoke here, so my voice is a little raspy, kind of right in the middle of the whole smoke thing here in the Northeast, Mid Atlantic area. So, apologize in advance. My voice is a little rough right now, but yeah, that's the way it goes. And I got to walk into DC tomorrow, so lots of fun stuff. So tonight, game 7 or game 3, game 7. I don't know this. I don't. Series doesn't feel like it's going to go 7 at this point. We'll be lucky if we get 5 the way it's going. But tonight's game is game number 3, uh, Florida or in Florida, 8 p.m. All the games in the series are at 8 p.m. Vegas leads the series 2 games to none. Have looked full value for both victories. Game 1 was a lot closer than game 2. But yeah, let's talk about those 2 games because it was a very interesting series. And again, thank you for joining us on TikTok, Twitter, TikTok over here, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all that stuff. If you're on TikTok, tap the screen, give us a few likes, the little hearts that float up. What that does is boost the algorithm and gets more people watching the show so that people can interact. Feel free to drop a comment on TikTok. I'll be looking over to try to make sure that I catch those comments. If you are on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, drop a comment, question. I'll be happy to talk about it anywhere, anytime as we go through the show tonight. But let's talk about the series so far as we've seen it. Like I said, it's been kind of a dud of a series, and we'll go over what's gone wrong for the Florida Panthers tonight. But yeah, so game 1, I thought Vegas did carry much of the play in that game, but Florida kept it close, closer than I thought. I mean, they actually scored the first goal of the series, a shorthanded goal. I thought, well, maybe Florida is just that team of destiny and is going to surprise everyone. Um, Vegas was able to tie it up later in the first period. Vegas took a lead into the second period or during the second period. Florida tied it up at the very end of the second period. I thought, man, this is going to be a pretty good game. But from there on, Vegas really controlled the play, and Florida just has not looked right ever since in both games 1 and 2 from the third period on. Um, and they took the first game 5-2. Mark Stone, the uh, I can't remember who it was for Vegas that scored to give them the lead in the third period, but then Mark Stone had a tremendous play that really kind of sealed the deal in that game. Um, Catching a puck out of the air with his stick. It was borderline, was it a high stick or not? But the way he was leaning over, they ruled that it was a legal play. Caught the puck out of the air, knocked it down, and took a shot and scored. An amazing play, kind of crystallized everything that happened in game 1 for the Vegas Golden Knights. Ryler Smith got a empty net goal to end that game 5-2. I didn't think Florida looked out of it in that game. I thought that they didn't end the game well, and that they started taking dumb penalties and getting game misconducts, um, trying to send a message. I think at this point in the season, um, message sending is a little bit overrated. I would rather you fight in the first 5 minutes of the game rather than the last 5 minutes of the game when the game is blowout. Um, Show that fight earlier in the game rather than acting like petulant losers at the end of the game. Brady Chuck was kicked out. And a few other Panthers were kicked out of that game. Then we get to the debacle of Tuesday night, I'm sorry, Monday night, where game 2 from jump that I thought the Panthers came out okay in that game. Um, didn't do anything spectacular. Radko Gudas had a nice hit early in the game, but then Radko Gudas got blown up. I think by Barbashev and had to leave the game. Did not come back. He is slated to play tonight, so we'll see what happens with Radko Gudas. But I don't think ever since that hit, they did not look right. The rest of the game, and the scoreline reflected it. 7-2 was just an epic beatdown. It was 4-0 going into the third period. They got a goal early in the third period from Anton Lundell, but you know, and right before the end of the third period or second period, Jack Eichel just, I mean, absolutely got shit mixed by Matthew Kachuk. Perfect hit, open ice hit. Uh, you see Eichel, he sees the hit coming last minute, but he toe picks and falls into the hit rather than tries to avoid the hit. Um, and watching him go off the ice, I thought, I think he broke his jaw because he had his mouth wide open, like all the way to the bench. And I thought perhaps he broke his jaw, and he's in big trouble. The Vegas Golden Knights are in big trouble if they lose Jack Eichel. Um, Apparently, all it was that he lost it knocked the wind out of him, and he was gasping for breath. And he was able to come back for the start of the third period. And in fact, after that Lundell goal, he set up the fifth goal for the Vegas Golden Knights, which was really kind of the coup de grace of that. Um, yeah, Sabres fan for life. I got a wrap, man. Look at this. This is even one of the new jerseys. This is my Miroslav Shatan jersey. It's my longest, one of my longest held Buffalo Sabres jerseys. But yes, I am a Sabres fan for life. Um, and it was pleasurable to see Jack Eichel get absolutely rocked to sleep with that hit. That was very, very pleasing. Um, but I mean, I'm glad that he came back. It's not like I want the dude injured. And a lot of people immediately thought when he got hit, they were like, "Oh God, what about his neck?" Because that was the reason why he left Buffalo's, that he couldn't get this experimental neck disc replacement surgery. He didn't want to do the spinal fusion surgery, and how is that going to work out? It's worked out for him. Uh, you know what? Don't discount what Jack Eichel's done so far in the playoffs. The Yeah, he hasn't scored in the last 2 rounds, but he is piling up assists. And in fact, if he gets 2 points tonight, he will set the record for points by an American player in the first 20 games of his playoff career. So he's 1 point behind Adam Fox of the Rangers, with or is he tied or he's 1 point behind? Yeah, he's 1 point behind. He has 22 points in his first 20 games. Uh, Adam Fox had 23 points in his first 20 games. Actually, Jack Eichel's only on game 19. So if he wins or scores twice tonight or gets a couple assists tonight, he's all alone as the top American through their first 20 games in the playoffs. So um, I wouldn't say you would miss him, um, but he would definitely throw off the chemistry of the team. He's got his line rolling, um, and he has the power play is going well. There's a lot of stuff that's going well for the Vegas Golden Knights. Um, but yeah, the game two is much like game one. In the very end, just became a circus of players hitting each other for no reason, and the Panthers starting fights and getting kicked out, game misconducts. When you look at the power plays for and against, really wasn't a ton of those. It was a lot of matching penalties that were handed out, a lot of 10-minute misconducts towards the end of the game. I think that Florida in the first two games is well over 100 penalty minutes, almost 120 penalty minutes for the Florida Panthers in the first two games. That's ridiculous. That's kind of like 1970s line brawl hockey numbers there. So they've got to clean it up. I mean, that's the thing. Vegas is responding enough to get the game misconducts as well, but they're not taking the dumb penalties. And let's take a look at, I mean, just the things that have gone wrong for Florida. And really, you could just say everything has gone wrong for Florida. First, they're getting very average goaltending from Sergei Bobrovsky. It's the kind of goaltending that got him replaced by Alex Lyon, like he did in Game Two. Um, So, he's gonna have to bring his game up, to what he was playing when he came in that Boston series all the way until game number 4 of the Carolina series. That's the game that they need from Bobrovsky, um, and it's just not been there so far. And, it's not just Bob. Uh I'm sorry, Brady Kachuk. Matthew Kachuk, only 1 goal. Sam Reinhart, 0 goals. Sasha Barkov, 0 goals. Carter Verhaeghe, 0 goals. Aaron Ekblad, 0 goals. Brandon Montour, 0 goals. These are all guys that have contributed a ton to the Florida Panthers, and they've got nothing. Kachuk scored a scrub goal that made it like 6-2 in game 2 before getting kicked out. Um, so even the contributions that they have made are just not that meaningful. Right now, their scoring leaders are Anton Lundell and Anthony Duclair, and I like Anthony Duclair. Anton Lundell's a decent player as well, but they can't be your top offensive guys. And you know, through 2 games, your top offensive guys would have a goal and an assist each. That's not good, especially against a team like the Vegas Golden Knights. Um, and somebody has to get going for Florida. I mean, you can't have all of those dudes. I gotta think that tonight you're gonna see somebody, maybe that 1 goal gets, Matthew Tkachuk going, that he ends up contributing a couple goals tonight. Um, Sam Reinhart's gotta contribute something. Brandon Montour hasn't contributed anything since the Toronto series. The last time he scored was the first game of the Toronto series, and he was a pretty impressive cog in the Florida Panthers, at least their run towards the playoffs at the end of the year, with lots of big goals, lots of contribution. They were flying up and down the ice. Vegas has really hemmed the Panthers in games 1 and 2. Now, they always say in a playoff series it doesn't matter until you get to game 3, and each team has had a chance to play on their home ice. Um, Florida has done really well in the playoffs and I said except for the first round, but in the second and third round did really well at home, um, and did well during the season at home. So we'll see if they can adjust their game, bring up their game. We did know that. I mean, I'm trying not to be too hard on Brandon Montour. His uh, first 2 games of the, NHL Stanley Cup Finals were sandwiched around the birth of his first child, and he had to fly from Vegas to, Florida, back to Vegas between games 1 and 2 just to witness the birth of his first child. His wife was supposed to give birth on the 14th, and was supposed to be induced on the 14th, but uh but she went into labor early, so he had to take off, and he came back. Um, uh, he's not been impressive this playoffs, but I mean, or at least this round, I would say that that's probably a good reason why. And maybe now that he's got a little bit more rest and not flying back and forth halfway across the country after a game, uh, will uh, will do better for him, and maybe he'll, score that goal for his kid or whatever. But yeah, Florida's got to get somebody going right now because there's just nothing going. Duclair's done okay, and Lundell's done okay, but that's pretty much it for this entire team. And my anticipation is that they will get somebody going, whether it's Kachuk or Reinhardt or Montour or somebody. They will get them going. Barkov, Ekblad, these guys are big money players for the Florida Panthers. They need to get going. So um, let's see. Tonight, how short is the leash on Sergei Bobrovsky? Let's see. Hopefully for the Panthers, they get their usual solid defense together on home ice. They are leaving teams I could drive an 18 wheeler through. I bet you could. I think you got the skills for that. I don't think they have to be that big of seams for that. But yeah, they're it's not just that. It's the fact that they've hemmed them in their zone and they get the cycle game going. And Florida is so much a transition team that um, if you hem them in their zone, they may just not be that good in the defensive zone that they need to be on the transition going up the ice. because they just don't play really good defense down low. So, um, yeah, I I hope they get their defense together. Even if you're rooting for Vegas to win the series, and I know get your first Stanley Cup final by any means necessary. If it means a sweep, that's fine. But man, this is not good for the NHL if this turns into a stinker of a sweep. So, um, and this is, Florida has now been in their this is their second Stanley Cup final. They have yet to win a game. This is not a record. They're 0-6 in their six Stanley Cup games so far. The record was St. Louis. They went 0 for 12 in their first three Stanley Cups. Now, granted, St. Louis was an expansion team, and then the first 3 years of the expansion era of the NHL, uh, NHL decided to put all the original six teams in one division and the new expansion teams in another division, guaranteeing the expansion side to have a Stanley Cup finalist, but they were just not that strong to beat either Montreal or Boston in those first three Stanley Cups that they played. So they went 0-12, finally got their first win in 2019 against the Boston Bruins. Of course, won that series, got their first Stanley Cup. Um, if Florida wants to chase that record, this is going to be a very short series. It'll end on Saturday on home ice, much like the first one where Uwe Krupp scored the overtime winner um, to win that series. But I hope not. I hope Florida puts together at least a game. And for Vegas fans, here's the sauce you can take if Florida pulls a game out: is you're gonna win the Stanley Cup on your home ice, and that's much better than, watching your dudes skate around the cup in a, empty arena because all the fans are pissed off and left. Um, uh, Much better, and you guys had to deal with that back in 2018 with the Washington Capitals skating around your home ice. So, um, it's not a bad thing if Florida wins either game 3 or game 4, on home ice so that Vegas gets a chance to skate the cup on their home ice. Um, but anyway, number, uh, game number 3 tonight is at 8 o'clock. Uh, it is on TNT, and I will say that TNT, um, there's been lots of news coming out of ESPN land. Apparently, Chris Chelios is out as one of the studio analysts for the ESPN coverage. I tell you what, I've said this before when it comes to the ESPN coverage. Uh, it is it's your dad's ESPN coverage, your dad's hockey coverage. When you put up the TNT coverage versus the ESPN coverage, it's light years away. The TNT coverage has been very cohesive, great personalities on there. Paul Bissonnette, that dude makes me laugh all the time, even though he's a Leaf fan. He gives me great pleasure whenever the Leafs get eliminated, just to see his reaction. Wayne Gretzky, I can take or leave Wayne Gretzky. Wayne Gretzky is there because he is the great one and um, has great stories. But Anson Carter and whoever they put in the coaches seat, whether it's Rick Tocchet or now they've had Henrik Lundqvist um, sitting in that last seat throughout the playoffs. That whole team is uh, very good. Liam McHugh, the host, is very good as well. I liked him when he was on NBCSN. Um, but the ESPN coverage has been kind of a mess, and not just because they have Mark Messier on. It there's just it just seems like there's kind of a gap between, well, you have John Buccigross who's trying to kind of relive the whole 90s era of ESPN by dropping catchphrases all the time, and I just kind of roll my eyes on it. He's he's kind of annoying to me. Then you had Messier and Chelios on one side, kind of like the grumpy old men sitting there on one side. And then you had PK Subban, who I love PK. I think PK is a great personality. Um, but just doesn't fit with the rest of the group. I think you need to bring in some younger, more engaging players. I'd like to see a Kevin Weeks get more time there. Um, uh, somebody with a little more flair. They just don't have it there on ESPN, and it almost seems. And this is my complaint about ESPN before the lockout, before the contract ran out. Hockey's kind of an afterthought for ESPN. Um, and Yeah, TNT's doing it right, and I'm glad it's on there. The only complaint I have about it being on TNT is that the Stanley Cup final is not on over the air television, which is kind of an old concept, but ABC, CBS, NBC, one of those channels would be nice to have the TNT coverage. And I think CBS is affiliated with TNT. Um, will be nice to see it on one of those major networks, just for increased eyes on the finals. Um, but again, TNT's coverage is phenomenal. Their studio is much more engaging than in ESPN, and looks like Chris Chelios is out. And I wonder who they bring in. Hopefully, it's somebody with a pulse. Hopefully, it's somebody that's more exciting and engaging, and um, and really jazzes up what goes on there. And I would hope that at some point, yeah, Buccigross has always been associated with hockey on ESPN. I just don't feel like he's the kind of guy that can drive that product. Um, he used to do the ESPN Tonight on ESPN2 for many years, and um, I just don't. I think the time has passed him by, and they need some fresh blood in that studio to make the coverage a little bit more engaging. Let's see. Other news this week, there was a big trade. Let's talk about the trade in the NHL. Ivan Provorov got dealt. So Ivan Provorov got dealt from, and it's you don't see a ton of trades between uh, the end of the regular season and the um, uh, end of the playoffs. Generally, they'll wait until the playoffs are over before they announce these big deals. Um, and I don't think they can officially consummate every aspect of the trade until the Stanley Cup Finals are over. But here's the deal that's been announced: that Columbus is going to get Ivan Provorov from Philadelphia. Philadelphia gets Cal Peterson, Sean Walker, a prospect Helga Granz. I think it was a second round pick. LA's 22nd overall pick, which actually didn't come from LA. It came from Columbus. Columbus had that pick from the deal that they sent uh, Gavrikov and Korpisalo to the Kings. So that goes to Philadelphia. It's now changed hands twice. And then they get the second rounder for the Columbus Blue Jackets in 2024. So that's a nice haul for the Philadelphia Flyers. And then Los Angeles, what they get is one contract relief with getting Cal Peterson in off the books there. They get a young defenseman in Kevin Connaughton, a prospect forward in Hayden Hodgson, and they do retain 30% of Ivan Provorov's contract, but what they're losing off of the Cal Peterson contract freed up some money. They've actually used it. It was announced today that LA has signed Vladislav Gavrikov, who they acquired in that deal for with Korpisalo at the trade deadline. It looks like Vladislav Gavrikov, who played really well down the stretch for the Kings. He is gonna get 2 years, and he was set to become a free agent at the end of the year, so 2 years with an average annual value of 5.875 million. So they're able to shore up the defense. Um, LA's kind of that team on the rise. They've got young players. Can the young players take a next step? I think is what they're counting on. Um, but yeah, that's LA is shored up their defense. Can their forward prospects take that next step and making them a not just a low or even wild card or third pick or third place in the conference, but going all the way up to the top two and going for Stanley Cups. I don't think they're quite there yet. I don't think they can compete with Vegas or Edmonton at this point, but they're getting close. Um, some of these forward prospects that they have, if they get too close to their potential, then there won't be an issue for LA moving forward. Let's see, a couple of coaches have been signed in Anaheim. The A former assistant coach in the NHL is the Islanders and the Leafs. Currently, the AHL coach from the Colorado Avalanche system at the Colorado Eagles. Uh, Greg Cronin has signed to coach the Anaheim Ducks, who will have the second overall pick in the draft, probably taking Adam Fantilli out of Michigan. Um, Not sure if Fantilli's going to return for another season at Michigan or he's going to come and play in the NHL next season, but that's a pretty solid draft pick. Fantilli's got a lot of talent, but Cronin, it's nice to see a new face in the NHL. Yeah, he's had some stints in behind the bench as an assistant, but we're not doing a retread. You're not seeing, um, you know, Mike Babcock, who we'll have news about here in a second, or uh, basically every coach that gets hired nowadays is just a retread that they coach somewhere else in the league. Peter Laviolette's in the news. John Hines is in the news. It's just the coaching carousel. So um, it's nice to see a new face. Um, but in Columbus, as we mentioned with the trade day before, they announced that Mike Babcock was going to be their head coach. So he comes back behind the bench. He's the longtime Red Wings coach, won a few titles with the Red Wings, and then went to the Toronto Maple Leafs, was the big free agent coaching signing there in like 2014, 2015. So I know Buffalo was trying to get him and he decided to go to Toronto. Did not go well in Toronto. He did, take the young team and bring him into the playoffs. But the problem was he was not a player's coach, did some kind of shady stuff with the younger players like Mitch Marner. Um, Kind of threw him under the bus a couple times. And eventually found himself fired and with a bad reputation and hadn't been in the league the last couple seasons. So, um, uh, Mike Babcock back behind the bench. I don't know if it's going to be a good fit in Colorado or not Colorado, but in Columbus. It doesn't sound like it'll be because I think he needs a team that's there ready to compete. And I don't I mean, even with the Provorov deal, and yeah, I understand they've got, Johnny Hockey there, and they have Patrick Laine there, and they're gonna get Zach Werenski back, uh, for training camp. They're gonna be a better team than they were last year. I just don't know that it's a very competitive Eastern Conference. I don't know that they're going to be there to compete in the playoffs with what is in the Metropolitan Division. And I honestly think that in the Atlantic Division, they're going to take five playoff spots. I think it's going to be five sorry, five Atlantics versus three Metros in the playoffs next season, just because there's so much of the rising talent is there in the Atlantic Division right now. Um, so that leaves a couple of vacancies open. Mentioned Peter Laviolette. There's rumors that he is going to go to the Rangers. It's kind of his job to lose. Although John Hines, who was recently fired by the Nashville Predators, there's a chance that he might become the Rangers bench boss. He's got experience coaching in the metro area. He was the coach of the Devils for a while. Um, I just don't know that. He's got the name. I think Peter Laviolette will probably excite the Rangers fan base more than John Hines will. There was a rumor that Patrick Wall was looking at the Rangers, maybe trying to come back to the NHL. His first stint with the Colorado Avalanche didn't go well, but he has been a stud at the junior level. Uh, he's winning Memorial Cups and doing all kinds of great things. So um, that's what's going on uh, with the coaching there in the Ranger system. We're waiting to hear what they decide to do. Um, shouldn't be too much longer. You kind of want to have your coach in place before you hit the draft, before you hit free agency, because players are going to want to know who am I going to play for. If you don't have a coach, that it's kind of hard to know if your skills are going to fit with that coach. So I would expect Pierre Laviolette to be the Rangers head coach pretty soon. The other vacancy is in Calgary. Um, the Flames have hired a new general manager in Craig Conroy, former player, former Flame and Blue. Um, and there's rumors that uh, you might get a brand new coach out of that one. There's talk that he's not looking for a retread. Whoever loses out in the Vegas or in the New York sweepstakes, then you probably won't see them in Calgary. So, who that new face is, not sure. Whether it's maybe a coach from Europe, maybe it's an AHL coach, not sure. But we'll see what happens in Calgary. Again, should be announced before the draft. Should be announced at the very latest before free agency. Let's see. Oh, nice little tidbit from the game two of the Stanley Cup Finals. They had presumptive and better be first overall pick of the draft, Connor Bedard. Uh, on the stage, they invited some of the top prospects to the Stanley Cup Finals. The combine is going on in Buffalo this week, although not sure how they're doing that with the fires and the smoke that's going over. Hopefully, they're taking it easy and not trying to get these guys to exert a bunch of energy in a bad health situation. Um, but Connor Bedard was at the Stanley Cup Finals with Adam Fantilli and a couple other players, and was brought on set of the TNT show, and has a little bit of a personality. He's on there. He's like, it's honor to be on here with the some really great players because you have Wayne Gretzky and Henrik Lundqvist and Anson Carter. He's like, yeah, I'm glad to be on with. There's some really great players here, and then there's Biz. And referring to Paul Bissonnette. So you get a nice singer on Biz. Biz does take quite a bit of heat. Was a plugger in his NHL career, and but he's one of the funniest dudes. I love Paul Bissonnette. I enjoy his commentary. So, um, but yeah, good on the kid to show a little bit of personality. Uh, that's kind of missing. Hey Jasper, how you doing, brother? It's been kind of missing with some of the superstars that we've had. Always got it in spades. Always got all the personality you want. Sid didn't really have the personality. Uh, Connor McDavid really doesn't have the personality either. Maybe of the stars in the league. Um, yeah, Patrick Kane maybe had some decent personality, but the more personalities you've got, you can hang your hat on and market those guys and bring more eyeballs to the game. Um, Especially if Connor Bedard is as advertised. And I don't. There's nothing that I've seen that says that he won't be as advertised and life changing for the Chicago Blackhawks franchise as he can be. Um, yeah, I don't. They're the last I've heard when it comes to the Bruins. There's a lot of flux with the Bruins because who comes back? Do they Bergeron come back? Does Krejci come back? Um, they still got some decent talent there, but the problem is they've spent a lot of money and they don't like. I think they only have like 7 or 8 forwards under contract for next season, so they're gonna have to splash. Are you going to bring back Bertuzzi? You're going to bring back some of the guys that you brought in for the Cup run, Orlov, Garnet Hathaway, those kind of guys. Are you going to be able to afford it for the Bruins? Um, I don't know. There's still enough there that I think that they're going to be fine as far as making the playoffs. Whether they're going to set records next season, I doubt it. Um, and not if you lose Bergeron and Krejci. Krejci was kind of bringing him in solidified the center ranks for the Bruins and, allowed them to kind of roll. If you lose both of those guys, how do you replace them? Who do you replace them with? How much are you gonna spend? How much money do you have to spend? Um, and, as far as Hartford goes, again, I don't think Hartford gets like the Arizona Coyotes. I saw a story where Gary Bettman is saying that, um, he's fighting for Arizona to stay in Arizona, which come on, dude. Read the room. If voters have rejected it in Tempe, are you just going to go around the valley to all these little towns and try and get them to pay and pony up both land and money for an arena? Um, I think you got to read the room at this point and say we got to move the team. I don't think Hartford is there as far as a place that can get a NHL team in a couple seasons, maybe if they start really planning on making sure that the arena there is hockey ready and ready to take a team. Because I do think that once they decide and they figure out what is going on with Arizona, that they will open up another round of expansion. Those expansion fees are beautiful for those owners, and yeah, if there's another round of expansion, Hartford's got to be considered. Um, the only problem is they're so close to four teams. You got Boston, you got New York, New Jersey, and the Islanders. They could all veto any move back into the metro area for the Hartford Whalers, or whatever you want to call them. I would hope you can call them Whalers. You'd have to probably negotiate that off of the Carolina owner Tom Dundon. Um, but yeah, what were where do they play? Will they be allowed to play based off of territory rights from Boston, New York, both New York teams or New Jersey? Um, you know what? I'm not going to argue that one. I don't think that they need three in the New York, New Jersey metro area. But they're all supported. So I mean, if let's say if the Islanders fans stopped going or the Devils fans stopped going, then you definitely have a case. They did talk about moving the Islanders a few years ago when Pittsburgh was also being talked to the whole ball silly thing. Um, uh, Talk of moving is always they're not going to move the Islanders right now because they just built that new arena there, and they're filling it. So, um, uh, but the reason why they talked about moving the Islanders was to get them to build the new arena. They had that temporary thing where we moved to Brooklyn, didn't work out. They were able to get Belmar Park built up and get that arena there. So Islanders are safe there. The Rock isn't that old. They're filling the Rock too. Um, but if they have teams that falter and have a long struggle, could be an issue. Um, They're going to touch the Rangers with Sabres, and the Islanders can be removed. I I don't think you remove the Sabres, and we've gone through that back in the day, um, when we had the issue with the Adelphia ownership in Buffalo. The Regas family had bought them after the original owners of the Sabres, the Knox family. Um, and then Adelphia went belly up. It was part of the whole dot com bust era, accounting issues and all that stuff. The owners ended up going to jail for a while, and the league took the team. And there was rumors because they couldn't find somebody who wanted to buy the team. There was rumors that if they weren't able to buy, s- uh, come up with a buyer for Buffalo, that they were going to move them to possibly out to Portland to be owned by the Nike dude, um, or uh, Grant Jim Balsillie, the old BlackBerry owner, his wish and move the team to Hamilton. There was all kinds of rumors. They did find Tom Golisano to buy the team. He kept him there. The Pagulas are rich beyond measure, and gas prices are helping them out now. So um, uh, I don't. There's money there. The fan support hasn't been there, but the fan support was there for most of the just awful years. Only once, the whole saga with Jack Eichel did you start seeing no, they can't remove Flyers. And here's the thing, um, it's very hard for them to remove a team that's won a Stanley Cup. Uh, if you look at the teams that ended up moving during the '90s, Hartford being one of them, uh, Winnipeg being the other one, and Quebec, none of those teams have won a Stanley Cup. So it's easy to uproot a team and send them there. Um, it's very hard to uproot a team that's got that cup history there. Um, Not to say it can't happen, but Philadelphia gets too much support. It's too big of a city. Um, yeah, I get but essentially from New York City, almost all the way to Boston, all the way down to Richmond, Virginia. It's one large city anyway. Um, Yeah, you do have a little bit of rural areas there in New Jersey and Maryland to an extent, but really it is just one large city. So yeah, essentially you've got several teams playing in the same large city. It's just you've got those pockets to support the teams. Buffalo's got the support as well. Um, I'm not a big fan of the Flyers. I don't like Philadelphia sports teams at all. So um, no, I mean, the closest they've ever come to moving a team that's won a Stanley Cup was Pittsburgh. When they had their issues with the arena, the old Igloo, and then they finally got the PPG Paints Arena. There was chances that they were gonna go to Kansas City. And the Islanders had that same choice that they could have gone to Kansas City and play at that time, the new MCI Center that was built specifically, for basketball and hockey. And they would have been the lone tenants there, which is why I think that Kansas City makes probably the most sense of an expansion team. Um, but yeah, uh, I just I don't see any teams moving besides Arizona anytime soon. Once they get through that cycle of figuring out where to put Arizona, then we're going to see four expansion teams, and we'll get a lot. Um, I would like to. I mean, there's all that nostalgia for getting, the Hartford Whalers back because it was such an iconic team, an iconic uniform. They had beautiful uniforms. That green color was so nice. I love when Carolina actually rocks it. I love their reverse retros that they had a couple years ago, where that was more silver, but they had those green and blue colorings. It's an iconic look. Um, but I also put that in the same vein as Quebec. Quebec, iconic look, the fleur de lis and that weird 70s stylized and with the hockey stick. Um, Absolutely iconic look. Um, but again, there's lots of things that prevent both Quebec and Hartford from moving on as a NHL team right now. But again, once expansion starts, if you got the money to put down roots there, I think if you got enough money, you could put a team in Hartford. Um, but yeah, I know. I know that anybody who has been Hartford Whalers fan or supports, kind of that traditional hockey, can't support the Carolina Hurricanes. I get that. Um, and it sucks that Carolina had, ended up winning a cup and, could have been Hartford, but um, they just didn't have this. They had the support. It was that their building was old, and during the '90s, that teams were getting moved. They're expanding southward. Um, they wanted to fill some of that empty space on the NHL map, and Carolina, that area of Carolina has a lot of northeastern transplants. That's why they put a team in Atlanta as well. A lot of northeastern transplants in that Research Triangle Park area, and down in Atlanta, down in Florida, down in Tampa. That's why you saw those expansion teams come into place because they were transplant cities. Um, and Carolina's worked. I mean, you can't look at what they've done the last few years and say, hockey in Carolina doesn't work. It's just that it sucks that Hartford had to lose a team for it. Yeah, it's again, it sucks that Hartford lost their team. Um, and it would suck if Buffalo lost their team. I feel for Arizona. I think they're going to end up losing their team. Eventually, Gary Bettman either is going to retire and they're going to move the team, or he's going to face the facts and they have to move the team. But um, yeah, again, they're not going to get they're not going to get the expand. So if they're going to get a team in Hartford, it has to be through expansion because they're going to have to pay a crap ton of fees to do it. If you just relocate a team there, I don't think you get that many fees out of that. I think there's some fees that you have to do for relocation, but yeah, I mean, you don't get the expansion draft, you don't get all that extra stuff that goes along with it. While Arizona has all kinds of draft capital and has could have a very bright future if they play it well. Um, the way that they've set up new teams, looking at what they've done with Vegas, what they've done with Seattle, I almost would rather have an expansion team. Start fresh, start new, start with something that doesn't have the baggage where it used to be. So, anyway, that I think is it for the week. Cole Caulfield signed a contract, 8 years at 63 million, which is an average annual value, and at a very good valuable value too, 7.875 million. Um, we're starting to see young players kind of take that. I'm going to get paid. Um, yeah, I'm not taking what Austin. I'm not taking $12 million like Austin Matthews took on his first, big contract. I'm gonna take 7,000,000. 7,000,000 pays just as well as 12,000,000, and I know I'm gonna get a second contract out of it. Worst case scenario, you get injured and yeah, you just live out the rest of your contract, but, um, there's a chance of getting more money down the line as well. Cole Caulfield's young, 28, or 8 years, probably put him in, closer to his age 30 season. Still a lot of gas left in the tank, and can parlay that into another big contract. So, but it seems like players are taking this idea that I don't want to take up too much of the salary cap because I don't want to be the lone ranger on this team, or I don't want to handcuff my team like we see with Toronto, where they have so much money dumped into a handful of players, and they really struggle to fill out the rest of the roster and have to do all kinds of weird trading and contract maneuvers to be able to fill a team. So, um, good on him. Good on Caulfield. Good on the Sabres young players that have, um, they've locked up Tage Thompson and Dylan Cousins and Matthias Samuelson for long reasonable contracts. Um, the benefit for the Sabres was they really got Tage Thompson under a long, reasonable contract before he popped off and nailed 38 goals and then 47 goals the last season. So, but you know, nailing these guys down for long, reasonable contracts uh, is going to set up both teams for long term success. So, anyway, that's it for the show this week. I got to go to DC, so I'm not even going to be able to watch the game tonight, which sucks. But I'll be checking out on the way into DC tomorrow. But hopefully you will enjoy the Stanley Cup Finals tonight, and we will talk to you next week, which could be if Florida doesn't get their poop together. Could be the last show of the season, at least on this. So, see you later, Jasper. See you, Heidi. Thank you for joining us tonight, and we will talk to everyone next week.